The comments and statements made within the show are the opinions of the commentators and their guests, have not been evaluated by the FDA, and are in no way attempt to diagnose, treat, mitigate, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. The contents of the show are not to be construed as medical advice. If you have a health condition or health concern, please contact a licensed, qualified healthcare practitioner.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom, and this is a Supplement Super Sleuth.
That'll be me. And the Herbal Storyteller.
And that definitely would be me. And together, we're going to take a peek behind the curtain of the natural products industry.
We'll be sharing naturals in the news, dispelling lots of myths, interviewing key players in the industry, and highlighting our favorite herbs and supplements.
So with that, let's pull back that curtain and see what's there.
Waiting for that happy
Hey,
music.
Tom.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How's the Herbal Storyteller today?
He's full of stories, and most of them are, well, let's see. We got some good ones in here.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do. We absolutely.
Yeah, this is a different episode.
Yeah.
Normally we have like a PowerPoint presentation or we have a guest, but we're just going to do naturals in the news, and then we're going to cover two of our favorite herbs.
Favorite things. Yeah, we're really. This is kind of all about the stuff that interests us and things that we love. So yeah. But we always start with our naturals in the news. We love keeping people abreast of what's going on in the news with research that continues in phytochemicals and also in nutraceuticals just generally. So naturals in the news will precede our favorite things. So let's start right off the bat with Tom, the Herbal Storyteller, talking about weightlifting.
Now, that's going to be an interesting one. One of the things that being a man of a certain age is the way the saying goes, which I'm not really crazy about that saying. Let's call a spade a spade. I'm almost 74. And we actually start losing muscle mass before we reach the age of 40. And that's caused in part because we're losing muscle fibers that happen to be what are called motor neurons. And these are cells in the brain and the spinal cord that tell our bodies to move. And they start to break down right close to the age of 40. And it's a decline that so far, now keep in mind that, scientists used to tell us you could not replace brain cells. And that's now been found to be not quite so true. So maybe this will be found to not be quite so true either. But at the present moment, they tell us that we can't stop the decline in our muscle cells. But what they found is that by doing weight training, even with seniors, we're able to protect those motor neurons and slow down the process. We can't stop it, according to what they say, but we can slow down the process. And what they did is they did a sampling.
We can preserve. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to remember is we can preserve what we have. So
yes. It's still going to start declining, but we can slow that decline down considerably. Yeah. And what they're saying is that if we start with doing weight training like that, and this is not like, Arnold Schwarzenegger weight training. This is just basically what they did is they took 38 healthy 70 average age of 72-year-old men, put them through a 16-week course of, what they said, fairly intensive weightlifting, leg presses, leg extension, leg curls, and 2 upper arm exercises. Those are your big skeletal muscle groups. And then they took another group, same age, but no weight training. And they found that they were able to really improve the quality of those motor neurons in the muscles and to slow down that breakdown of those qualities. Now, it's not my kind of study because it involved taking biopsies of their muscles throughout the study. Stick a needle in and take a little bit of their muscle
you worked so hard to build them up. Now we're just going to stamp them, take a plug out. And But people do. They do turn their bodies over to science, and thank you for that.
Yes, and the thing is
that
it works. It
Yeah,
just
it does
plain
work.
works, and it works for
It does.
men and it works for women as well. So
And it's
the
funny because I
idea,
think a lot of people do feel like when, they start to get into their 40s, that things slow down and their desire to move starts to shift into more sedentary. So you kind of have to fight a little harder, I think. Don't you think? I mean,
Mhm.
I know I do. I mean, I used to love to be in workout every single day, and now it's
Yeah.
like, not sure.
Well, it reminds me a long time ago in a bookstore, I saw this book with an older guy, definitely, saggy skin, the whole like, okay, you're 74, your skin doesn't look like a 24-year-old anymore. Um, and he's lifting weights and he's like really intense. And it's like, hey, growing old is not for sissies. Getting old is not for sissies was the title of
It's
the book.
not.
And it was basically the whole idea of you've got to take responsibility for your health. You can't just sit down and go, okay, well, I'm just going to be healthy because I'm not going to do anything with my body, but my body's just going to stay healthy anyway. So you have to do something. And that's what I love about this article is that
Yeah.
it's just another reminder that, hey, simple weight training, simple exercises can go a long, long way in helping us
And
to
Tom, that
feel.
whole point of working out the larger muscles, that's very true. Like the quads, the glutes, the lats, the larger groups of muscles, working those out, it really gets a big bang for your buck.
Yeah.
And I used to have a lifting coach who used to say, "Oh, there's only 3 lifts." And I used to say, "Well, why do you say that?" He said, "Because you just work the big ones, the pecs, the lats, the glutes, and the quads. And if you work those, everything else kind of follows suit." So,
Hmm.
um, and
Well,
he kind of, there was truth in that.
yeah, and
So,
it reminds me that
yeah.
when I used to have my farm on the Big Island, working that farm, we'd go into Hilo all the time to take produce in and do things like that. And I used to talk to the old Filipino gentlemen who were playing checkers or chess in the little park, that little park down there with little pavilions and the whole 9 yards. And I'd see this guy and I would say, okay, how old are you? Because he looked ancient and he was in his 90s. And I said, how do you get here? And he said, I walk. And I said, where do you walk from? And he pointed up the hill and he said, oh, I live about 3 miles up the hill. And I said, so you walk downhill and then do you take a bus or something back? He goes, no, I walk back. And I said,
Mm,
well, why do you do that? And he said,
walking.
those are the biggest muscles in my body. I want to keep them exercised because it'll keep me younger. And he was
Yeah,
90 something.
it's true. Yeah, and if you take care of your feet, ankles, and knees and hips, you can walk. We have so many people that, lose those joints or lose health in those joints. And then that's when things really start unraveling. But yeah, it's absolutely true. Big muscles, keep them healthy.
Yep.
All right. Next one is Tom's going to talk about beetroot juice. It's huge now. It's in
Oh, that's
every
everything. I'm
superfood. It's
serious.
in every superfood now. Beetroot juice. So,
It will be the new food shortage. I'm sorry, we're out of
oh
beets
yeah,
because
we're out of
everybody is
beets.
everybody is drinking beetroot juice. But the idea is that there's a dietary nitrate in beetroot,
Mhm.
and that improves blood pressure responses, especially during any kind of exercise, isometric, ischemic exercise, especially in young males. So this was a study that was done, and they just wanted to see, okay, how much healthier could this beetroot juice make somebody? And it lowered blood pressure by a significant amount.
Mm,
It was
yeah.
if you did, especially with multiple day supplementation, which means more than once a day, you could actually have a really good effect on your circulation, because what beetroot juice does and that nitrate does is it helps to produce what's called nitric oxide in the body. And nitric
Yes.
oxide, NO, has many different things. I mean, a lot of people, especially if you're a guy, you'll think, oh, hey, nitric oxide and erections. And we talked about that in past
Right.
episodes,
It's a
right?
part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's a part of it.
and it's part of it, but the part that's the part of it because of the circulation effect. because it's enhancing circulation. And by enhancing circulation, it has a cardioprotective action because
Yeah.
it's relaxing
Yeah.
blood vessels, and that increases blood flow, and it lets the heart work less to accomplish the same or more.
Yeah.
So, there are other vegetables that you can think of besides beets. You've got spinach and lettuce and celery and arugula and fennel and radishes. Sounds like a salad, right?
But that I love roasting them in the oven and
Oh, yeah.
eating them in the winter. They're wonderful. They store well when you grow them. They store well over winter. So those roots do become winter food. And what's better than keeping your circulatory system when the weather's bad and you can't get outside and do the same amount of things that you
Hmm.
normally do during spring and summer and autumn. You have to keep that blood flow and keep the circulatory system going to your hands and your feet, your periphery, if you will. You want to keep those healthy, and there's nothing like beetroot for it. Some people hate the taste of it. It actually tastes sweet to me.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, there's
I think they do.
at least in the Costco by me, they're now selling fresh pressed beetroot juice along with apple, lemon,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
ginger, and it's,
it's a thing.
absolutely delicious. Yeah, and you can
It
even
is
enhance
delicious.
that by
Yeah.
mixing some more beet powder in there, beetroot powder in there. And really, again, what this study does is it shows that there was a considerable improvement in the lowering blood pressure, especially after exercise, of the large muscle mass muscles,
Yeah.
like the large
Yeah.
muscle legs, or large leg muscles, and things like that. So
Yeah. And a lot of people who used to drink carrot juice all the time, they turn a slight, you know, orangey color.
mhm.
Well, don't worry, you're not going to turn purple if you drink a lot of
No,
beetroot
but
juice.
but
So,
you might want to be forewarned that if you look at your poop, you're not gonna have the same color
oh,
poop.
it will look bloody. Yeah.
It'll look like you've suddenly got bloody poop,
Your
and it's
your
not.
urine can too look a
Uh-huh.
little on the pink side if you take a lot of beetroot juice. So don't be concerned. Don't go running to your urologist thinking, "Oh goodness, something's
I'm
wrong. I ate all
bleeding
these beets."
internally.
Right.
Nope.
Okay, well our next headline is really interesting. I am very excited about this. The headline was posted in Eureka Alert on September 14th, 2020, and it says CBD shows health benefits in estrogen deficient mice. That's a model for postmenopause. So before we even get into human research, they often test it on the animals first. It's just the way research goes. So sorry, it's a heartbreaker for me. But the actual research article, published research article, originally came from Front Pharmacology in June 2022. If you want to go there and read it yourself, it says cannabidiol treated overectomized mice, not rice, mice show
I was
improved.
gonna say,
That was
how do you
funny.
take the how do you take the ovaries out of rice?
Ah, whoops, little brain thing in there.
Good morning.
Show improved glucose, energy, and bone metabolism with a bloom in lactobacillus. So when we lose our estrogen, we end up get our gut changes dramatically because those hormones that were originally there, they disappeared. So lots of times there's gut dysbiosis in women who, this is post menopause. So after you go through the shift, and then as time marches on and estrogen's at zero, there's other things that happen. You get just chronic inflammation, gut dysbiosis, increased risk of cardiometabolic disease, and then osteoporosis. And then what a lot of researchers are doing is they're trying to find other options to hormone replacement therapy because it's
Yeah,
not favorable in postmenopausal women. It will
could be real
absolutely
problematic,
increase your
can it?
risk for cancer. Oh, it's big. Yeah, it's just we're seeing the incidences of cancer rise precipitously related to hormone replacement therapy. So a lot of researchers are trying to find something else. And cannabidiol, which is a non-psychotropic phytocannabinoid extracted from hemp, has shown pharmacological activity, suggesting it has therapeutic value for postmenopause ladies, which can be modeled in, first they modeled it in mice, right? So they take the ovaries out of mice, they force them into menopause, and then they see if CBD works. And they evaluated the efficacy of cannabidiol administered orally. So that's great. They didn't do it
Intramuscular, yeah, they
intravenously.
didn't do an injection.
Yes, or intramuscularly or intravenously. And they they studied it against mice that didn't get anything, so for 18 weeks, and compared to the non-treated mice. The CBD treated mice had improved oral glucose tolerance, increased energy expenditure, improved whole body bone mineral density and bone mineral content, as well as increased femoral bone volume. And trabecular thickness, which means the whole femur bone was thicker and stronger. And
Sounds like good news all the way around.
yeah, all the way around. And in addition to that, this is really interesting. They started to get an abundance of fecal lactobacillus species, and some of the gene expressions in the intestine changed for the better. So there was reduced inflammation, less bone resorption, better microbiome, kind of intestinal environment. So the whole being of the mouse improved. So there is a real consideration, and there's real research now to provide preclinical evidence supporting further investigation of CBD as a therapeutic for postmenopause related disorders. So we don't know how much per weight, so we're early in the study, but how exciting is that? And I'm very excited about it because it's, we plant medicine is everywhere, but knowing exactly how to utilize it in the modern day for issues that are like postmenopause is not really a disease, it's just a state of being, and the state of being is a declined state of being. So
Mhm.
what we're trying to do is really support women as they age to reduce their disease state and just kind of support the whole being, and CBD is high on the
Well,
list.
and you remember because we had a really wonderful interview with, oh, now all of a sudden, with Carl.
Carl, yes, and that was like episode 3 or
Mhm,
episode 4, something early in the beginning.
mhm,
Yeah.
and he was
So go
talking
back and check that out.
exactly.
Yeah.
Go back, it's a wonderful article. He's a very, very, learned gentleman.
Carl Germano.
Germano, yep.
He wrote, wait a second, where
He
do I
wrote The
have that
Road to
open here? Yeah,
Ananda.
he wrote The Road to Ananda, which I have right here.
Mhm.
And you can go read that book. That's really great. But research
Yeah,
continues,
and
it just keeps going,
it's fascinating to know that we have receptor sites. In other words, we have it's like the cannabidiols are keys that open locks that start processes within our
Yeah,
body, and we have those receptors for that particular plant in
exactly.
our body.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, evidently, so do the mice or the rats in the study because they responded
Well,
as well. So
they
it's kind of
responded very,
universal.
very favorably. Yeah, it is universal. I love that word, Tom. Really, really excellent. Okay. So exciting news. All right, Tom.
Okay, I'm going to take it over and say that one of we hear a lot of meta this and meta that. We've got our microbiome and our metabiome and this, that, and the other thing. Well, one of the things that science is also studying is what are called metabolites. And metabolites are different compounds that are absolutely essential in functionality of different systems in our bodies. And they've been looking a lot at the Mediterranean diet. You know, very low on the heavy protein side, but really high on the really good, rich plants and bitter salads and things like that. The Mediterranean diet is noted for, and they found that with a Mediterranean diet, there's actually better mental health. There's an article called "Following Mediterranean Diet Linked to Healthier Brain Activity." And what they did is they identified specific metabolites in blood levels that they correlated with cognitive function. And every one of those metabolites was related to diet. And that came from Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is out in your neck of the woods, right, Nan?
It's out my neck of the woods. Yeah.
Exactly.
Medical mecca here in the Boston area.
No kidding. And so
Yeah.
literally what they found is these metabolites, they're what they're called small intermediating molecules that are produced by our metabolism, and they're definitely affected by our diet. And really, according to the human, it's called the Human Metabolome Project.
Metabolome?
Yeah, Metabolome, Metabolome project. The human body relies on more than 2,000 or 4,000 rather metabolites. And so there's a lot of institutions all around the world that are actually researching these metabolites, understanding how they're connected to diet. And interestingly enough, it's just yet another, gold star on the banner of the Mediterranean diet and eating that way, to show that, this was a study which was published in the Scientific Journal of the United States Alzheimer's Association. And it was built on identifying these 6 particular metabolites that were known to enhance cognitive function. And when they tested these on literally thousands of people, and they were looking at American, Hispanic, Latino, European, African American adults. So totally wide longitudinal studies were used for the research. And basically they said that, there's a very strong impact of the way your diet, and this is something that Nan and I talk about quite a bit. There's a strong impact on what you eat. So the old saying, "You are what you eat," is definitely true.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
So really good news
garbage
there.
in, garbage out.
Absolutely.
Right?
And it's to quote, while there are clinical trials showing that diet can influence cognitive function, identifying specific metabolites can help identify specific mechanisms and specific components of diet that are more important than others, and biomarkers to measure the success of dietary changes. And so what they found is that those metabolites are very much enhanced and preserved, if you will, by the Mediterranean diet. So it makes sense that we found this article in Olive Oil Times.
Oh, yeah.
And that doesn't refer to Popeye. That actually refers to the olive oil industry.
Oh, Popeye. Okay. I know. Oh, Popeye. We're being silly.
It's okay. This is every once in a while we have a lot of fun with our episodes here. Most of the time.
We definitely do. All right, moving on to our final naturals in the news for today is delta tocotrienol upstages alpha tocopherol in fatty liver disease trial. This was posted in Nutra Ingredients. Nutra Ingredients. September 23rd, 2022, data from a new double-blind study show that delta tocotrienol exerted a stronger effect in decreasing body weight, inflammation, and apoptosis in patients with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease compared to alpha tocopherol. If you listen, people, to episode 18, we have an in-depth conversation about vitamin E and all of its components. There are tocotrienols as a class of compounds and tocopherols as a class of compounds.
Yep.
And vitamin E as a vitamin is a complex, meaning it's complex. It has many components to it. So what I think is really interesting about this, and of course I'm going to share some of this article and some of the research with all of you, is that once again, researchers, and we need to, please don't take it the wrong way, but we definitely need to look at these molecules and see what they do and what they don't do. But sometimes we get really excited and we just focus on those single molecule instead of saying, oh, cool, this molecule does this, and isn't that great in the context of the whole food that shows up in vitamin E, okay? But according to Mayo Clinic, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease affects approximately 80 to 100 million adults in the United States,
It's one of
and
the
it may
fastest
even
growing
be more
health issues in the country.
it's a very real thing, and I see a lot of people in my practice who have this issue. Um, vitamin E is something that is oftentimes, so way back when nutritionists used to have men take vitamin E because there was this cardioprotective effect with vitamin E. And it's really, really come full circle now. Vitamin E can be used on the skin. It's really good. Lots of times that liquid vitamin E is just um, D-alpha tocopherol, and it's in or DL um
Mhm.
uh tocopherol, which, again, listen to our episode 18 and we really break vitamin E down so you understand what's going on and why there's so many conflicting stories about vitamin E. But modern research shows that annatto contains tocotrienol, with extraordinary antioxidant properties. Natto is only one plant source that provides the delta and gamma tocotrienols. Those are very potent forms of vitamin E, but we can't forget the tocopherols, right? Whole plants offer, whole vitamin E, like wheat germ and wheat germ oil, whole vitamin E,
Mhm.
annatto, whole vitamin E with tocotrienols and tocopherols. Um, and it's really interesting because um, this is it's a powerful antioxidant. It's powerfully anti-inflammatory in the cardiovascular um, system. The study was interesting. It was a double-blind controlled study. It was done by a very large Pakistani research
And this was a human trial,
company.
right?
It was a human trial. There were 100 patients that had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and they received either 300 milligrams of delta tocotrienol or 268 milligrams of alpha tocopherol, which is that original form of it. And they took it twice daily for 48 weeks. And then at the end of 24 and 48 weeks, they conducted, kind of measurements, blood measurements. The study found that the two phytonutrients exerted equally beneficial effects in improving hepatic stenosis, oxidative stress, and insulin resistance. But the delta tocotrienol from the annatto was more potent than alpha tocopherol in reducing body weight, inflammation, systemic inflammation, and apoptosis, which is kind of a language that has to do with how our body manages circulating cancer cells. Now, we
Mhm.
make cancer every day. I know it's like people are like, "What are you talking about? I don't have cancer." But we have cells that
We have
they
cancer.
just go off the reservation. They're naughty. They forget what they're supposed to be doing, and our body, kind of has an in kind of ingrained system of what's called apoptosis. Apoptosis means cellular suicide. And
Mhm.
so our cells kind of are self-aware, generally speaking,
Ah,
and they know when they're going bad and they suicide
yep.
for the good of the bag. That's what apoptosis really is. So vitamin E, the tocotrienol, exerted more effect on that normal systemic cellular apoptosis mechanism. That's a normal mechanism. So that's just supporting
Mhm.
what your body already knows what to do. So it's a big deal to say that they thought, wow, these tocotrienols look really, really incredible in compared to the tocopherols. But again, I want to remind you, it's whole vitamin E complex. We want to focus
You
on
wanna get
that
it all. Yeah.
because
Don't
we want to get it all.
don't go
Um,
it's like turmeric and curcumin, It's like, sure,
yes.
everybody's curcumin happy, but turmeric has so many other compounds.
So, annatto tocotrienols have been clinically shown to support cardiovascular health, promote bone health, reduce inflammation, maintain healthy blood sugar levels, boost brain health, lower lipids, increase life expectancy in cancer patients. And again, vitamin E, as like we had in our episode 18, it's a big deal. It still is. And we just don't hear about it as much as we used to.
Yeah,
So,
it doesn't hit the news as often. So when it does hit the news, it's
exactly.
important like this to point it out and remind
Certainly.
people that that's why we did the episode on ACE, vitamin A, vitamin
Yes.
C, vitamin E, vitamin
C,
D.
D, E.
Those
Yes.
4 episodes. And you
Yes.
can go back and check all of them because each one of those are quite crucial. And yet we don't. The only thing that we hear a lot about is because of COVID was vitamin D, but we still
D,
don't.
right.
We don't hear enough about vitamin C. We certainly don't hear much about vitamin E. It really sort of fell off
E,
the
that's for
radar
sure.
because of
I know
one.
it really
And there
did.
was that one study. Remember, several years ago, there was that
Right.
one study saying,
Several
"Oh,
sits.
it doesn't
Yeah.
work. We've tried it," but they used the completely wrong version of the vitamin E,
Right.
and
They
it.
use the DL tocopherol,
Mhm.
which is um it is made out of petrochemicals,
Yeah,
and we know for a fact it's actually pro-inflammatory
yeah,
because it's synthetic. So you have to get the right form. So go back, listen to episode 18, you'll get the whole rundown
yep.
for sure.
All right. You know what that sound is? It like makes
Wow.
me feel happy because we're about to talk about our favorite things
Our favorite things. We haven't done a favorite things
in a long
session in
time.
a
It's right.
long time.
Multiple
Yeah.
episodes ago. And yet,
Yeah.
when we do them, these are things that not only are our favorites, but they're things that we know are really beneficial. It's part of the reason they're our favorites because we know that we can recommend
Yeah.
them to people and they're going to be very surprised and pleased with the results they get.
Oh, absolutely. And there's also enormous amounts of research too.
Hmm.
So Tom, am I starting off? Are
I'm
you
going to let
starting
you
off?
start
Am I
off.
okay? Ladies
Yours has
first.
an alphabetical letter that's before mine, so you can start.
Okay, we're going alphabetically. All right. So I'm here to talk about one of my favorite things is elderberry. It's also known as black elder. It's a small tree or shrub with very dark purple berries and a white to light yellow flowers. I'll never forget the time that my dad and I were talking about, all right, we're going to put elderberries in the farm. We have a family farm, and I lived there for a while, quite a while. And he said, let's put elderberries in because my dad was a berry farmer. I mean, he's passed on, but so, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. And he was exceptional at berries. He really knew how to grow them. And so then he said, how about elderberries? And so we started growing them. And it takes a little bit. There's male and female, and it takes a little bit to get them started. Once they get started, they take off. So
Yeah.
elderberry it's indigenous to Europe, some regions of Western and Central Asia, and North America. The flowers of the elderberry bloom around June, July, and the berries mature sometime in September and October, depending on where your latitude is. And traditionally, the flowers and the berries and the inner bark were used. They were always used as herbal medicine. And in ancient times, it was well known as the tree of healing prosperity because
Mhm.
um, cultures back then used all parts of the elderberry. They used the twigs, they made instruments out of them, they made straws out of the twig. I mean, they used it for so many things.
Yeah, it used
Roots
to
were
be plant. A
used.
lot of times, it would be planted right in front of the house or the home that they were living in,
Yes,
just because it
absolutely. It
was
was such an
very accessible
important.
medicine.
And the leaves were also, so the leaves have kind of a toxin, a neurotoxin in them, and they used to use it as an insecticide. So European cultures have always had elderberry in their you know uh, in their gardens. The elderberry bush will grow really high and it'll become a hedge too. So it kind of
Hmm.
like creates a boundary around your property too.
Definitely stains.
Um,
So if you're picking elderberry, it
oh,
definitely stains.
Oh, it stains. So when you go to pick it, don't wear clothing that you're particularly fond of. In Europe, elderberry was prepared into wines, elderberry wine. And this time of year, I always watch Arsenic on Old Lace and
Hmm.
the old ladies with the elderberry wine, one of my all-time favorite Cary Grant movies. And I always laugh about how the ladies put the arsenic in the elderberry but without the arsenic, elderberry wine is quite herbal. It's herbal medicine. They also made pies, jellies, and elixirs. Some Europeans would also take the flowers and wash their face. Um, Elderberry flowers have been known to create a glow. It's good for the skin. Um, And they sometimes would take elderberry tea with the flowers, so the elderflower, not elderberry tea, but elderflower tea, to induce a sweat if they weren't feeling well and they wanted to kind of push the whatever little bug out through the skin that open the pores. The flowers will induce a sweat if you take it with hot water. So using different parts of the plants, the flower, the berry, the root, the leaf, all does a little bit of different um, action in the body. In the Americas, the Native American culture here would use elderberry flower infusions again to reduce fever. The bark of the elder was also used as infusions for salves to treat sores, eczema, burns. Indigenous people here would use the inner bark for a diuretic or laxative purpose. And sometimes to induce vomiting if somebody ate something that like a poisonous mushroom, or they ate something that wasn't settling right, they would induce vomiting for that. They also use the berries as tonics for neuritis and rheumatism. So elderberries have traditionally been used for centuries against
And highly
cold and
respected. Yeah.
flu. Oh, highly respected against cold and flu. I'll never forget when the original research from Israel came out on elderberry against influenza, and it was remarkable because they depicted what we would call a mechanism of action. And that mechanism was interesting that in the berries, when you extract them with alcohol, you pull out these glyconutrients. And that's what they are. They're types of structural carbohydrates that coat the outside of cells. And that coating creates a slippery kind of protective layer around at each and every cell, and the virus cannot attach to the cell
Yeah, that was
membrane,
what
and so
was
they
that was what
slide
was
off.
fascinating about it. It was like putting on a coat of armor
Yeah,
around your cell.
it was amazing. It was really amazing, and it was a slippery coat of armor because the viruses couldn't get a land. They couldn't get a grip,
Yeah, and
and viruses need to get a grip in order to get into the cell to steal
that's how
the
they do their damage is they get
that's
into
how
our
they
cells. Yeah.
replicate. They don't have RNA, so in order to replicate, they need to I call them invasion of the body snatchers. The viruses are
Mhm.
like, they literally have to get into the cell in order to replicate and then become a problem. But if they don't get into the cell, like if your mucous membranes are really, really healthy and you've got lots of glyconutrients in there that are protecting the cell membrane, they're just going to slide off, so that's the mechanism of action. And God, it was what, almost 20 years ago when that major Israeli study came out. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
Um, One study published in 2016 in Nutrients Journal, written by Evelyn Triolongo and her research team, entitled Elderberry Supplementation Reduces Cold Duration and Symptoms in Air Travelers. And this was a randomized, double blinded, placebo controlled clinical trial, so gold standard. They aimed to investigate elderberry extract. To see if it had beneficial effects on respiratory and mental health of 312 economy class passengers traveling from Australia to an overseas
Does
destination. And
that
they
does that
had
mean
participants.
where they pack them in
I
like
know.
cattle? They pack them in like cattle?
Exactly. They had the participants complete surveys 10 days before, 2 days before travel, and then 4 to 5 days after reaching their destination. The results found that elderberry was able to decrease the symptom load and reduce their cold duration by approximately 2 to 3 days. So that's great. So it just helps, right? Influenza is common viral infection, can potentially pose severe to fatal risks in what we call high risk population. So the aged, you know, people who have metabolic diseases like diabetes, people who have autoimmune conditions, they're at very high risk. And in a 2004 study that was entitled Randomized Study of the Efficacy and Safety of Oral Elderberry Extract in the Treatment of Influenza A and B virus infections. It was written by Dr. Zake Rones and his team of researchers, and they published it in the Journal of International Medical Research. And they said that elderberry was very effective in treating influenza A symptoms. They compared their study to a prior placebo-controlled double-blind clinical study that was done in Panama. The prior elderberry study done in Panama showed a complete cure of influenza B achieved within 2 to 3 days in nearly 90% of the elderberry treated group. And all in all, elderberry extract proved to offer an efficient, safe, and cost-effective addition to the present arsenal of medications available for both influenza A and B. And it is well known that elderberry is a supportive agent once you have the common cold or common flu. So, but lots of times people who use elderberry traditionally, most herbalists will say you have to pre-treat. So you have to just start taking it. You
Absolutely.
start taking
It's
it
like a
at the
loading
end of
dose.
August.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really important because once you already have it, you can kind of, reduce symptomology, but it's not like you take a dose and then you're cured. That's not how this
Right.
works,
Right.
you know.
And
So
it's
you
kind of
have
like the old saying, you don't miss your water until your well runs dry.
That's really true, Tom.
You really want to set
Um,
it up so that you've got a load already, because that makes your cells slippery. It's too late to make them slippery after the
exactly.
virus has already had its way with you.
Yeah, it really there and interestingly enough, there's studies on other kinds of infectious agents, not just influenza A and B, but they're in 2011 published in BMC Complementary Medicine Therapies, written by Christian Kravitz and his team of researchers. He had a study entitled Inhibitory Effect of a Standardized Elderberry Liquid Extract Against Clinically Relevant Human Respiratory Bacterial Pathogens, both A and B influenza. And they pretty much said, yeah, the antimicrobial potential of elderberry syrup against several human bacterial and viral pathogens known to cause infections in the upper respiratory tract. The elderberry syrup was responsive towards 3 strains of streptococcus and a strain of Bronhamella, which is a type of rare influenza infection. But it really showed excellent antimicrobial activity in a human clinical study.
Yeah.
And last but not least, in 2021, in a research article entitled Elderberry for Prevention and Treatment of Viral Respiratory Illnesses, written by Susan Weiland and published in BMC Complementary Medicine and Therapies Journal, they concluded after a systematic review of all the research that has already been done on elderberry, they determined that the benefits and potential harms of elderberry for prevention and treatment of viral respiratory infection leaned more towards benefits versus harm. So, in addition, the review assessed the relationship between elderberry supplements and possible negative health impacts associated with the overproduction of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So a lot of people were saying that, well, you can't take elderberry for COVID because COVID increases inflammatory cytokines. But what's really interesting about elderberry as a whole extract, right? Elderberry extract is that it has hundreds of components doing hundreds of mechanical
Hmm.
supportive homeostatic mechanisms in your body. So they didn't find any association with elderberry and increased cytokine production. So elderberry overall as a choice for anything going on during autumn or winter is can I say it, no brainer.
Yeah.
It's just covers the gamut.
Well, and
And
especially for seniors and people getting, yeah.
absolutely, I September hits, I start taking elderberry every day. What a lot of people don't understand about elderberry is that it has other supportive qualities to it. A lot of people don't know that it has a great effect on high cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been long revered for medicinal purposes related to cholesterol. Um, there was an interesting study that was done and published in a European Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2004, entitled Effects of Elderberry Juice on Fasting and Postprandial Serum Lipids and Low Density Lipoprotein
Yeah.
Oxidation in Healthy Volunteers. This was a randomized, double blind, placebo controlled study. And basically, what they found is that even in small doses, like 5 milliliters, it reduced overall blood cholesterol levels.
Yeah.
And elderberry has a profound effect on our cardiovascular system in general. Elevated levels of uric acid have been linked to an increase in blood pressure and gout. And believe it or not, elderberry also has application there. So in a 2014 study published in the Journal of Functional Foods, there was an article that read Advanced Research on Antioxidant Health Benefits of Elderberry Sambucus nigra in food. And basically, what the researchers found was that they found that elderberry had a positive effect on blood pressure, was able to reduce oxidative stress, increase antioxidant enzymes, especially the ones related to uric acid levels. And one of the reasons why it's found so much throughout European herbal traditions is that it has this global effect on the body, right? It has been shown to significantly improve endothelial cell function, releasing substances that control vascular relaxation and contraction, as well as the enzymes that control blood clotting, immune function, and platelet adhesions. Last but not least, elderberry also has application in blood sugar regulation. There's been a handful of studies done on elderberry's antioxidant properties that are beneficial for balancing the blood. A 2017 study entitled Effect of Elderberry Sambucus nigra extract supplementation in induced diabetic rats fed a high fat diet. So the researchers were looking in animals and they wanted to know if there was a mechanism of action in elderberries that could reduce possible blood sugar issues. And the results showed that elderberry extract was able to balance the blood sugar levels and help reduce insulin resistance. And more studies are needed, but it is definitely high on the list, especially since a lot of people are now taking elderberry in the autumn and winter
Mm-hmm.
time. So,
Oh yeah, if
whew,
you go into a store now, you're going to see elderberry everywhere in the vitamin
it's
section.
everywhere, and you have to be careful because you don't want too much sugar and you want a really solid extract. And Tom and I always have our favorite companies that we think do a beautiful job making sure they have the proper kinds of extractions, proper parts of the plant, and that the plants have not been mixed with other plants that are not effective. So
Right.
that's really important to keep in mind. Elderberry is now considered, other than turmeric, one of the top herbs of commerce in the world
Yep.
because of its abilities. So it's an extraordinary plant. Please check with your herbalist, chiropractor, naturopath, acupuncturist, whoever you see,
Your alternative
to make
practitioner.
sure
Yes.
it's right for you. Yeah, you do need to make sure that it's not contraindicated for any drugs that you're on, or that it's right for you at this time. But definitely incredibly safe, incredibly effective. One of my favorite things. Tom, take
Wow.
it away.
All right. How do I follow up on that? Nan always
Oh,
does such a great
Shankahpushpi is
job.
amazing.
So
Thank you.
one of my, one of the things about herbs is that they were recognized as the primary source of medicine. Even the World Health Organization has recognized them as the primary source of medicine and health around the world, and suggested that they be preserved above everything because that is how most of the people on the planet still take care of themselves. Now, the oldest, one of the, arguably the oldest system of herbal medicine in the world is Ayurveda. and that's from India. And Ayurveda is
Yes.
easily well over 5,000 years old as a continuously in use science, and they have many different categories. Now, one of the categories that they have in Ayurveda that I'm particularly interested in is, in Western medicine, we would call things an adaptogen, something that helps our bodies to adapt. In Ayurvedic medicine, they have what are called rasayanas, and rasayanas are things. If you look at it and break it down, you've got a rasa, which is the taste or the relationship, and rasayana has the implication of rebuilding or restoring to a proper relationship. And they have specific categories of rasayanas, and one of those categories is called the medhya. And medhya rasayana they're what we in Western civilization now would call nootropics, something that helps us to work with our cognitive functioning, our remembrance, our ability to learn things, our ability to recall things, our ability to hold on to what we already know. That's a medhya rasayana, and one of the primary medhya rasayanas happens to be one of my favorite herbs, and that's an herb with a really unusual name called Shankahpushpi. Now, Shankahpushpi is a member of the morning glory family. So it is a convolvulus is the Latin name for it. Convolvulus, and the let me see if I can find the other. Yes, it's pluricollis. Convolvulus pluricollis is the Latin name for it, and it is a white morning glory. It has the ability to improve the powers of acquisition. In other words, our learning memory, our learning ability, power of retention. How long can we hold on to those things that we've learned? And the power of recollection. How easily can we access those things that we've learned? Now, I know as people age, again, being in that category, sometimes it's very interesting to, have that recollection. It's like, oh, yeah, I can still learn stuff. And yeah, I can still remember it, but can I recall it when I need to recall it? And that's, it was kind of like with me with Carl Germanos. I knew his name was Carl, but for a little bit there, I was like, okay, I've forgotten his last name. I've forgotten his last name. And that's the power of retention. Now, Shankahpushpi is an herb that was literally the whole plant was used, and it was an herb that was used for memory and improving cognition, memory intelligence, creativity, learning skills, executive functionings. And so they're very, very, as one of my favorite class of herbs. Anything that has to do with cognitive function is something that I really do feel greatly attracted to, just because it is it's where we're going. It's where all of us are going as we all get older. The big thing that we're thinking about the most is, okay, my memory. I don't want to lose my memory. I don't want to lose my cognitive function. So very often, Shankahpushpi, which again they would use the whole plant paste, and they could blend it with milk, and that milk, because a lot of Ayurvedic herbs are fat soluble, and so by taking those herbs with something that has fatty substance to it, like whole milk, not your 1% milk, but literally your whole milk, they would boil it in whole milk, and they would use about 10 grams of it in whole milk, and that would give them the effect that they were looking for. The best time
I
to
had
do.
a
What's
I
that?
had an Ayurvedic teacher when I was studying Ayurveda, and he used to put it on sesame oil and
Mhm.
put it in his nostrils.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, so there are a couple of ways to take it. Of course, a lot of people would never snort their Shankahpushpi, but
Right.
you might.
Well, there is an
Milk is
Ayurvedic herb.
better.
There definitely is an Ayurvedic herb, uh, which is called sweet flag or Acarus
Yeah,
calamus.
calamus. Yeah, that
Calamus
is
was
definitely
specifically
snorted.
used as what they call an
Yes.
asayan, a knot.
And yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
in the nose.
nootropic as well.
Yeah.
But Shankahpushpi, I mean, I've seen an old time Ayurvedic guy just put it on sesame oil and put it up his nose. So
Hmm.
I don't know.
Well, and the benefits that they ascribe to it in Ayurveda is that it increases lifespan. It increases
Mhm.
immunity, so it has a very big effect on enhancing immunity, and it helps to prevent and treat diseases. It's got wonderful digestive power, so that digestive fire, what we call the digestive fire, they called Agni, who was the god of
Good name.
fire.
Yes.
And it improves the complexion, so it's used for dermatological uses. It improves the quality of your voice. So if you're a singer, Shankahpushpi is really something that can help very much. It increases brain power, especially memory or retention, concentration, mental perception, your creativity. I mean, literally, there's so many different things that it works on learning and reasoning skills. And they, in Ayurveda, they make a great deal of talk about how safe this is. So Shankahpushpi is a very, very safe herb to use.
Oh yeah.
They actually
Yeah.
can make it into a syrup that they use
Yeah.
they use Brahmi or Bacopa Muniera, which we've talked about. And they use sugar, a little bit of sugar, because a lot of Ayurvedic medicines were mixed with sugar. But in this case, they had what's interesting, and sometime Nan and I will probably talk about that too. There are so many different types of sugars. And in
Oh
Ayurvedic
yeah.
medicine, they recognized at least 8 different types of sugars. Each one had
Yes.
its own medicinal use. So just a
And we
combination.
unfortunately in America have said all sugar is bad,
One
which
sugar, and
is
then
not that's not it.
it's one
High
sugar to
fructose
rule
corn
them all.
syrup is bad. Right. One sugar to rule them all.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, but truly, it's not like that. There are glyconutrients that are
Yeah,
crucial for our immune health. And
yeah.
so,
And
Tom, that's really
and
true.
a lot of times in Ayurvedic medicine, it would be mixed with what's called jaggery, which is just whole sugarcane, dehydrated whole
Right.
sugarcane juice, not processed,
Beautiful.
not filtered, not.
Right.
And it's wonderful. That's actually a medicine in and of itself. But that's
It
a whole
is.
nother
Absolutely.
conversation. We've actually mentioned
Yes.
jaggery before in some of
We
our
have
episodes.
mentioned
Yeah,
jaggery. Yes, we
yeah.
have. Yeah. Yeah.
So literally,
Absolutely.
the Shankahpushpi, when you blend it with Brahmi, with that Bacopa Muniera, it's used as a memory booster. It increases mental attention. It increases your power to retain. It's a
Yeah.
It's a brain nerve stimulant, so it stimulates
Mhm.
your thinking process. It helps to relieve, improve your learning capabilities. It's an anti-stress. It's antidepressant. It's a mood
Yeah.
stabilizer. It's an adaptogen. It's an
It's
antioxidant. So
beautiful herb.
really just
Yeah.
an amazing herb. And the thing is that
Beautiful.
it's also used a lot for, and it makes perfect sense. If you have a positive effect on your memory and your cognition and your recall and your learning ability, you're in a much better mood. You're much happier when you've got
Absolutely.
all of those things working. You're not worried about learning problems. You're not worried about forgetfulness or your inability to
Yeah. It's
concentrate.
frustrating to forget. Yeah. It's very
And
frustrating
it,
when
and
you're,
the really interesting thing about
searching
it
for.
is that it also is really a good herb for children with ADD or
Oh,
ADHD.
it's excellent. It's excellent. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
It's
is
interesting how it wakes up the mind but settles the spirit. That's
yes.
what I love about it. It's
Hmm.
like children who have ADHD, the reason why they're so hyperactive is that their body's trying to wake up the temporal lobes. Temporal lobes are actually under
Yeah,
functioning.
under firing.
And so the body does what it does. It's trying to create homeostasis. So it's the body's spinning out to try and get parts of those brains that are under functioning to function. And the beautiful thing about Shankahpushpi is that because it gets the brain to function more from more homeostatic mechanisms and not drug-like mechanisms, the body quiets down. It just makes
Hmm.
total sense, right? It's just,
Yeah, so
yeah,
it's
balances
actually
thing out
calming you and letting you to be nice and alert at the same time.
at the
And
same time,
yeah,
which is really lovely.
plus it has a wonderful effect on lowering stress levels and on
Yes.
lowering levels of anxiety, which is a lot of
Yes.
times is associated with ADHD because the kids are
Yes.
very anxious trying to get their
They're
brain to
very
function the way
anxious.
they
Yeah.
want to be. And
Yeah.
also for
It's hard.
depression. So it's got some multiple uses. Now, there are plenty of scientific studies out there using Shankahpushpi for cognitive function. Actually, they did a very interesting mouse study where they used it for both younger and older rats, and they were able to show that the improvement, the cognitive improvement in the older rats was much bigger than it was for the younger rats. So it is definitely something that as we get 45 and older, it's something to start thinking about. Wow, this would be a really good herb for me to take on a regular basis. You can take it first thing in the morning and later in the afternoons. Really great times to take it. And the studies are going on looking at how it has actually a positive effect on the mechanism of Alzheimer's disease. So this was a very recent study on the let me see if I have it right here. It's like the Shankahpushpi, it ameliorates human microtubule associated protein tau, the tau protein that's associated with
Yeah, tau
Alzheimer's,
protein.
that induced
Yeah.
a neurotoxicity in Alzheimer's disease. And so it's literally they're looking at how it can reduce the neurotoxicity of the proteins that are connected with what they think anyway at this point, connected with Alzheimer's. So
Alzheimer's,
fascinating herb. I love it. And combining it with some of our other favorites like Gotu Kola or Bacopa, Brahmi, and combining with ashwagandha, these are all wonderful herbs that it can be combined with. And
Yeah.
you can make your own
They're all
little tea.
rasayanas. Yeah, and so rasayanas are really just supportive and homeostatic. And rasayana means that which is closest to God,
Mhm.
in the Vedas. And these herbs really are like that.
Well, that's the actual intention of it. The return to rightful relationship is that return to that connection with the divine.
With the divine.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I'll take some of that.
I'll have
Whatever
what she's
he
having.
said.
Just like
Whatever he said.
Sleepless in Seattle. I'll have what she's having.
I'll have what she's having. Yeah.
Yeah, and you may be wondering who the heck are these goofy people. If this is the first time that you've tuned into us, it's not a wrong turn. You did a good job turning into it. Nan has a complementary and alternative health and herbal clinic that she's had for over 30 years. And she's located in the northeast of this country, as she mentioned, outside of Boston. And she's focused on difficult to treat conditions and has also been a spokesperson and an educator in the natural products industry for over 27 years for some of the most reputable and well-known companies in the industry. And it's been my pleasure to work with Nancy for the last 12 years. And we have, the mutual respect for each other and mutual attraction to the idea of really diving into the research and finding out what the research is saying. In fact, that's why I gave her the nickname Supplement Super Sleuth, because she can go down the rabbit hole looking for what's the bottom line truth here.
Yeah. And Tom's herbal background goes all the way back to 1970. I was 5 years old then, in Hawaii, where he was an organic farmer and he worked with local practitioners making fresh organic juices for their patients. And those juices were given as a prescription by the physicians there. And since then, for the past 30 years, probably more than that, he's worked for two very large and well-known companies as their herbal educator and trainer.
And herbal storyteller.
Tom just said it. He's the herbal storyteller, and I have incredible respect for him. There is nothing like going on an herb walk with Tom. You don't walk very far, but everything is up for conversation relative to
just about
everything is medicine and his ability to ID plants in the wild is really extraordinary. He recognizes them; they're his friends. I'm definitely more clinically oriented, but to see the plants as they are in nature, going on an herb walk with Tom is really extraordinary. Maybe someday he'll do that. He'll do a virtual herb walk for all of you. That would be a blast. So anyway, just so you all know, we'll be doing this podcast twice a month. We share our perspectives of natural health and healing. We interview key people and thought leaders in the natural products industry and also in natural and alternative healing. And we want them to share their knowledgeable perspectives. If you wouldn't mind, please like our Facebook page. Like our Instagram. We're on YouTube and TikTok as well. Please share the podcast with interested friends and family and let us know if there's anything you'd like to hear us.
Absolutely. We would love to hear. If you would like to hear about a specific subject, like I said, if there's research on it, Nan will find it.
All right, everyone. See you in a couple weeks. Thanks so much for tuning in.
All right. Bye-bye.
Adios. Bye. Okay, everyone. Until next time, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom.
And we'll have more great topics and guests in the very near future. So Join us right here in 2 weeks as the Supplement Super Sleuth.
And the Herbal Storyteller take another deep dive into the fascinating world of the natural products industry.
See you later.